You read the Epstein files. Jess Staley sent the email to Jeffrey Epstein, basically saying, "Man, we ain't afraid of no regular citizens revolting up against the elites, and you know why? Consumerism." He said, "You want to know why we are not Sao Paulo? Watch the TV ads on the Super Bowl. It's all about hip blacks in hip cars with white women. The group that should be in the streets, basically revolting against us, has been bought off by Jay-Z." Basically, what he's saying is y'all are so consumed with consumerism, chasing these bitches, trying to be in flying cars, trying to be what you see on TV in these ads that we give to y'all, buying the products that we make and give to y'all. Y'all can't see what's going on around y'all. Because if y'all really stopped, ignored that, and looked at what was going on, y'all be in the streets right now.
Right.
Pitchforks and stakes burning, running us out the country. He said, "Man, we ain't worried about it. They slaves."
They slaves. They slaves to consumerism.
Talk about goy slop for a sec, right? So I've been an anti-Semite for about 5 years now. So I've been aware of all of the dog whistles and the goy slops and blah, blah, blah. Goy slop became a term of just things that are like unhealthy, not good for you, or just not good for your life. Like McDonald's is like goy slop, or watching Love Island. That's some good goy slop right there. Because the whole point is that it's supposed to weaken the minds of the goyim, right? But it's essentially that the Jews, this is what it stems for. It stems from the fact that the Jews are funneling garbage and slop to the goyim to make them fat and stupid. Consume the goy slop and get stupid so that the Jews could like run everything. I would argue that the Jews would run everything anyways. I don't see the point of goy slop. Now it got like mainstream. Majority of people probably don't even know what the goy part of goy slop means. They probably just know that it's just stuff that's bad for you.
Before about ideological subversion. That is a phrase that I'm afraid some Americans don't fully understand. When the Soviets used the phrase ideological subversion, what do they mean by it?
Ideological subversion is the slow process which we call either ideological subversion or active measures, активные мероприятия in the language of the KGB, or psychological warfare. What it basically means is to change the perception of reality of every American to such an extent that despite of the abundance of information, no one is able to come to sensible conclusions in the interests of defending themselves, their families, their community, and their country. It's a great brainwashing process which goes very slow, and it's divided in 4 basic stages. The first one being demoralization. It takes from 15 to 20 years to demoralize a nation. Why that many years? Because this is the minimum number of years which requires to educate one generation of students in the country of your enemy, exposed to the ideology of the enemy. In other words, Marxism-Leninism ideology is being pumped into the soft heads of at least 3 generations of American students without being challenged or counterbalanced by the basic values of Americanism, American patriotism. The demoralization process in the United States is basically completed already. For the last 25 years, actually it's overfulfilled, because demoralization now reaches such areas where previously not even Comrade Andropov and all his experts would even dream of such a tremendous success. Most of it is done by Americans to Americans, thanks to lack of moral standards. As I mentioned before, exposure to true information does not matter anymore. A person who was demoralized is unable to assess true information. The facts tell nothing to him. Even if I shower him with information, with authentic proof, with documents, with pictures, even if I take him by force to the Soviet Union and show him concentration camp, he will refuse to believe it until he is going to receive a kick in his fat bottom. When a military boot crashes his balls, then he will understand, but not before that. That's the tragic of the situation of demoralization. The next stage is destabilization. This time, subverter does not care about your ideas and the patterns of your consumption. Whether you eat junk food and get fat and flabby, doesn't matter anymore. This time, and it takes only from 2 to 5 years to destabilize a nation, it's what matters is essentials: economy, foreign relations, defense systems. And you can see it quite clearly that in some areas, in such sensitive areas as defense and economy, the influence of Marxist-Leninist ideas in the United States is absolutely fantastic. I could never believe it 14 years ago when I landed in this part of the world that the process will go that fast. The next stage, of course, is crisis. It may take only up to 6 weeks to bring a country to the verge of crisis. You can see it in Central America now. And after crisis, with a violent change of power, structure, and economy, you have so-called the period of normalization. It may last indefinitely. Normalization is a cynical expression borrowed from Soviet propaganda. When the Soviet tanks moved into Czechoslovakia in '68, Comrade Brezhnev said, "Now the situation in brotherly Czechoslovakia is normalized." This is what will happen in the United States if you allow all these schmucks to bring the country to crisis, to promise people all kind of goodies and the paradise on earth, to destabilize your economy, to eliminate the principle of free market competition, and to put a big brother government in Washington, D.C., with benevolent dictators like Walter Mondale, who will promise lots of things, never mind whether the promises are fulfillable or not.
Shalom. Before I get started with the lesson, I want to give all honor, praise, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushai, Bahashem, Rakahakwadash. Double honors to my apostles and elders of Great Millstone that taught me this truth and that rule well. And peace and salutation to the elect that sat here laboring in all truth and sincerity. To USA Shalom. This brother Amon Ariyah from the GMS Charlotte camp, coming back with another Lord willing, edifying lesson to feed the elect of the nation of Israel. And in this lesson, I wanted to get into, all right, from the clips that I put in the beginning of the video. All right, pretty much, you know, these elites are pretty much leaking these Epstein files with the thought pattern of they're not concerned with the average everyday Americans to revolt against them, because they understand that these people are as what they call goyim, all right, useless eaters, sheeple, you know, different name that they, you know, they have for the people, because these people are pretty much, you know, consumed by the lust of the flesh. All right, they're consumed with the bullshit that's being fed to them, what they will consider, you know, goy slop. All right, a bunch of, you know, madness that these people have been, you know, conditioned to think that this is life. All right, consumerism, you know, black culture, whatever. And the first video you saw, that group of Jake that were, you know, speaking on this dude, Jess Stanley or Staley, who was the former CEO of the Barclays, and he was just going into how, you know, he, you know, speaking for all the elites, they're not worried about the people revolting because they're so far gone to the point to where they don't fear a revolt. All right, these people, you know, standing up and fighting against the government because they love the product, which is Babylon, that has been given unto them. All right, they, you know, as much as they, you know, are speaking out in disgust on, you see on these social media platforms or whatnot, you know, that's as far as it's gonna go. All right, you're not gonna see these people take action behind those words, because like I said, man, they, you know, they truly aren't up and roar you know, about what's going on, you know. So this is why the Spirit of the Lord has called, you know, the elect out of this world, because the only ones that's going to truly be able to stand up against the wicked elite, you know, and what they're doing is the prophets, the prophets and the true believers that the Lord has, you know, opened our eyes to be able to see exactly what Esau Edom is doing in the world. All right, and the only way that you can truly, you know, do anything against these devils is, you know, first by, you know, repenting and turning back unto your power. All right, because that's the biggest threat that these devils have against their kingdom is the nation of Israel repenting. All right, so starting out, I want to open up here in Ecclesiastes chapter 7 and verse 2. It says, "It is better to go to the house of mourning than to go to the house of feasting, for that is the end of all men, and the living will lay it to heart." Right, because in the house of feasting, you see, all right, Esau has manufactured a culture, that pretty much will keep the people, asleep. All right, that's why, I wanted to put the latter part of that video in the beginning, dealing with the dude Yuri Bezmenov, who pretty much was a KGB informant and disinformation expert. All right, and he exposed, what you call subversion. All right, because the KGB, was one of Esau's groups that was, declaring psychological warfare on the people. All right, and so what he was explaining was the 4 stages of subversion, and one thing that he was making mention of that we see that is a byproduct of Esau, giving the people what they call that goyslop, is that the American people have been demoralized. Really, the world, but dealing with the Americans, all right, that they have been demoralized to the point to where they're not able to access true information. So when they're seeing these Epstein files and the nastiness that is inside of them, the initial reaction is to react with disgust. If you have a conscience, because when you read about the torture, the rape, the murder of children, the human sacrifice, the eating of human flesh, drinking blood and all that, that should set the normal man off. All right, but at the end of the day, there's no action that's going to come beyond that, because like I said, you've been demoralized, man. All right, it's like it's a shock value thing, because the prophets have been bringing these things out for years. All right, the elders and apostles was breaking these things out, because this is nothing new. All right, these type of things have been going all the way back, all right, since the time before the flood. All right, dealing with the sons of the wicked, and then going into the Canaanites, the Egyptians, the Babylonians, and on down. So these Edomites that are in the power seat today, all right, have got that knowledge of the left hand from these different kingdoms, and have perfected it to the point to where they have the technology to make it to where the people are literally putty in their hands. All right, sheep ready to be slaughtered, which is why they're conditioning a lot of these people to get ready to take this chip, and they're going to take it. All right, but I wanted to go into this whole thing with the demoralization before I continue on. So as the guy Yuri Bezmenov was speaking about, how he said, the facts, all this information that's going to come out, and it's really not going to do anything, to the people. So I want to read this. It says, "The facts tell him nothing. Even if I shower him with information, with authentic proof, with documents and pictures, he will refuse to believe it." And that's exactly, what was being done as we were bringing these things out in the scriptures. We were telling these things. We were showing the different documents that leaked up until this past couple years of the Epstein files really being released like that, because we were speaking about Pizzagate. We were speaking about the what's that dude, Podesta, going into things like Wayfair and Walmart, how they were trafficking children, all right, under the guise of you buying furniture or different things online, but then the thing will be listed as a child's name. All right, the Clinton emails, okay, all these different things were proof of what we were talking about, but the people didn't believe it because, like I said, they've been demoralized, man. All right, so it said, "That is the tragedy of the situation of demoralization. Once people's morals have been debased, education becomes indoctrination, entertainment becomes hypnosis, criminals become leaders, and lies become truth. And that is the reality of life under the Edomites. This is the creation that they have, created for the people, and they've taken it on, all right, with no with no question. That's why, like I said, if you can drown a person in pleasure, they're not going to think about what's going on in the earth, man. All right, they're not going to think about what's going wrong, because they're consumed with pleasure. This is why the goy slop that you're fed, all right, you're given, the GMO foods, all right, you're getting sprayed with these these chemtrails, all right, you're drinking the poison in the water. All these things that Esau had done filled you with all these different forms of pharmakia, all right, the pills, the juices that they've been giving us throughout the years. These different things were all used to dumb down the people. All right, when you go into what they call the Masonic Creed, that was them pretty much telling you, all right, how they declare war on you through medicine, through food, through television and everything else, to dumb you down to where we're at a point to where all this truth is being brought out, and the people really, they're not responding in a way that a sane a morally sane person would. All right, so real quick, this is 1 Timothy chapter 5 verse 6. It says, but he that liveth in pleasure is dead while she liveth, because this is speaking of the nation of Israel ultimately, but you can apply this to a real woman as well. But just the nation of Israel as a whole, all right, is spiritually dead, because Israel is nothing, they're not concerned with anything but, as you heard the Jakes going to, the consumerism, the hip hop, the chasing the women, money, cars, clothes, hoes, all that bullshit, that is Jake's life. All right, NBA, NFL, all right, just had the Super Bowl. All right, you're about to have All-Star weekend this weekend. Jake is all on social media, consumed with the BS news that's being pumped through things like TMZ and Media Takeout, Shade Room, and all that bullshit. They're not fully equipped to handle the information that's being brought out. That's why, like I said, the most that you're gonna get out of these people is a post, okay? Because that's as far as they can process things, to where they'll speak about it, and then it's on to the next thing. It's not going to be no real action that's going to come from that, because the people have been demoralized, desensitized, and brainwashed into this fake ass reality we know as the Matrix, man. And so this is why when we bring these things out, proven with the scriptures as well as the information such as the Epstein file, to show you that these Edomites, starting with the tiny tops, are the wicked that the Bible speaks of, the people still can't see it. You still have Jake that'll argue you up and down that the so-called white man is not the devil. All right, shit, we just saw the video, all right, dealing with the leader of IUIC, get questioned about, do he hate white people? All right, and he totally, folded on the question, man. He says, he said that God hates, and that we're not supposed to hate, because that's a evil word. No, man, we are commanded according to the scriptures to hate evil. Matter of fact, let me get that real quick, because everything that we've been, bringing out concerning what the devil is doing in the earth, man, that's wicked as hell, and we are commanded to hate that, man. All right, give me a second. All right, this is a good one. This is Psalm 97 and verse 10. It says, "Ye that love the Lord hate evil. He preserveth the souls of his saints. He delivereth them out of the hands of the wicked." Right. So it says that ye that love the Lord hate evil. All right. We are commanded to hate All right, the wickedness that's going on the earth, as well as the people committing the wickedness, man. All right, because they're showing their hatred towards Yahweh Shem Yahweh Shai, man. All right, and so if you're enemies to the Lord, we are commanded to hate you. All right, this is Psalms chapter 139 and 21. It says, "Do not I hate them, O Lord, that hate thee? Am I not grieved with those that rise up against thee?" It says, "I hate them with perfect hatred. I count them my enemy." Right. So, hey, if you are in the right mind, you would hate these devils for the things they're doing in the earth, man. All right, that shit with that's being exposed on the Epstein files, man. That is that's not even really all of what's being brought out, man. And we don't need to know, those things that's not being spoken on, because the stuff that we're being told is bad enough. All right, and we know this devil is doing way more than what we know, man. All right, because the scriptures describe this man and his characteristics, and it shows you, all right, that this man is indeed the devil, but he has hid himself, all right, to make it seem like he is the children of the Most High. That's why they took on our identity as calling themselves the JOOs, man. All right, but we see this man for who he is, man. All right, real quick. This is the prayer of Azariah chapter 1 and verse 9. It says, "And thou didst deliver us into the hands of lawless enemies, most hateful forsakers of God, to an unjust king, and the most wicked in all the world." We see this man for who he really is, man. All right, this devil is the cream of the crop when it comes to the wickedness, man. All right, starting with those small hats, because they, all right, are truly tapped in to the power of Satan. All right, but they have convinced the world through the manipulation of the mind of the people. All right, that they are these innocent loving people. That's why they took on the term white. All right, and put the term black upon us, because according to the definition, white is meant to represent purity, angelic, good, and then black is demonic, evil, dead. So these devils, through the use of color psychology, psychological warfare, all these different psyops that has been done unto the people. All right, they have convinced the world that they, all right, are the children of the Lord. Okay, like it says here in 2 Corinthians 11 and 14, it says, "And no marvel, for Satan himself is transformed into an angel of light." All right, and to the average public, this is why they're in such shock, because they couldn't fathom that it'd be men on the planet that will actually do the things that we're reading in these Epstein files, man. But like I said, when you understand, all right, biblical history, we understand that this, it has been done in times past, all right, because these things that we're reading about are nothing more than high-level satanic rituals that these elites, do to access and gain that power on the left-hand side, and ultimately to bring forth that as a sacrifice for them to have their new world order, blessed by Satan. All right. So, the things that we have been bringing out throughout the years, the people are just now beginning to see that what we were saying is true. Okay. But the scriptures have been putting this man on blast since the beginning. Okay. This is Wisdom of Solomon chapter 1 and verse 9. It says, "For inquisition shall be made into the counsels of the ungodly, and the sound of his words shall come unto the Lord for the manifestation of his wicked deeds." And like the scripture says, I'm going to get one more before I fully go into that, because that inquisition has been made. When you go into that word inquisition, it means, let me pull it up real quick. It says a judicial investigation, act, or process of inquiring. It says a searching into, a seeking, legal examination, a seeking of grounds for accusation. All right, because through the Spirit of the Lord, this man has been put on trial, all right, before the heavens, to show that the wicked needs to be punished for the deeds that he's doing in the earth, man. All right. So as you know, as we were saying, okay, that Inquisition is proving to you that these devils are indeed, the Edomites, and according to prophecy, these Edomites have been trying to run from their judgment, all right, since really going all the way back to Cain, because we know that the Edomites, they descend from the line of Cain, all right, because that same wicked spirit that was in the serpent, all right, that was in Cain, that's in these Edomites, man. All right, they are the seeds of the sons of the wicked, man. So everything that we've been bringing out as far as dealing with this is just proof to you to show that this is why Yahweh Shem Yahushua is about to judge these devils in such a horrific manner, all right, because they have been evading judgment, all right, going all the way back to the serpent. It's a hefty, judgment that the Lord is about to pay these devils with because of the wickedness that's being done in the earth, man. All right, you are destroying not only the planet, all right, the people, all right. You've declared war on the Heavenly Father, all right, and His Son, man. Okay, so part of that Inquisition is knowing exactly what this devil has done, man. All right, and I always quote that book, Silent Weapons for Silent War, I think is what it was called, because that dude William Cooper also spoke of it too. Let me make sure I got the title right. Let me go on Google. Yeah, so Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars, okay? And Esau has been, secretly declaring a war on the people, specifically the Israelites, but he's so much of a devil that he has included his own people and the other nations as well, all right? So, real quick, this is the book of Psalms, chapter 64 and verse 1. It says, "Hear my voice, O power, and my prayer. Preserve my life from the fear of the enemy. Hide me from the secret counsel of the wicked, from the insurrection of the workers of iniquity." So part of the, that secret council, all right, is the different, alphabet groups that Esau has formed, to the pretty much declare that psychological warfare, all right, the different stages, because it's all different forms of warfare has been declared upon Jake. Psychological, biological, molecular war. Everything that you can possibly think about, Esau has did, just to keep it a buck with you. All right. So it says, "Hide me from the secret counsel of the wicked, from the insurrection of the workers of iniquity." NLT. "Hide me from the plots of this evil mob, from this gang of wrongdoers." Right. And that's going into, all right, Esau and his secret societies, man. All right, his secret groups such as, the Council 13, the Council of Foreign Relations, the Trilateral Group, the UN, all the different, conspiracy theory things that we talk about. Well, Psalm 83, is an example to show you that those things that I just named are scriptural. All right, these devils have counsels to where, unbeknownst unto the public, the very things that we bring out, the videos that we have, these show you exactly what is being done, and the scriptures talk about these things, man. All right, it says, "Who whet their tongue like a sword, and bend their bows to shoot their arrows, even bitter words, that they may shoot in secret at the perfect. Suddenly do they shoot at him and fear not," because the main recipients of who this devil, is giving, this desensitization, this demoralization to, all right, was Jake. All right, Goyslop is mainly something that was given to Jake. All right, and like I said, the byproduct is that his own people, all right, were fed it too. All right, so now the average American is a bumbling idiot. All right, because when when you start to get, deep into things like what this devil is capable of doing, such as, weather control, all right, you know, the things that has been given to us that don't make sense, or why it's a part of the average everyday, way of life, such as having, televisions, phones, and all these so-called black mirrors in our lives. Hey, it's been all out witchcraft that been declared on the people, but you can't tell nobody these things because the people have been demoralized, man. As Yuri Bezmenov broke down, all right, you can give Jake or give the people all this information, show the documents, go into the different things like the Operation Paperclip, all right. You could go into the videos that we show on TikTok on these different people exposing the things that's being done, and the people still won't believe it, man. It says, verse 5, they encourage themselves in an evil manner. They commune on laying snares privily. They say, who shall see them? They search out iniquities. They accomplish a diligent search, both the inward thought of every one of them, and the heart is deep. And when you go into that word deep, it means to be unsearchable. All right. So as we made that inquisition into the counsel of the ungodly, all right, all these things that we are now seeing being talked about in the public, all right, is proof to show you that not only was everything that we're saying true, but it's also proof, all right, that this man is coming out of the power, because the main thing that was able to keep him, all right, in that security was that the secrecy of what they were doing, all right, was unbeknownst to the public, all right. But now they don't care that these things are being brought out, all right, to a degree, because number one, like we brought it out in that first video, all right, what that dude from the ex-CEO of the Barclays has said. They know that there's not going to be no real revolt or uprising, because the main ones that should be speaking up and revolting is Jake. But Jake's not going to do that, because that requires Jake to let go of this world. So that means no more rap music, okay, no more NBA, NFL, all right, no more whatever Jake's their culture, okay, selling drugs, chasing bitches, none of that. You're gonna have to give all that up and truly come back unto Yahweh Shem Shah, because going out and protesting and all that's Esau don't fear that. Esau knows that is bullshit. That's why George Soros funds these things, man. Like BLM was funded by Soros, man. All right, so that was no real threat. They actually want you to do that because it makes you easier to identify who is now against what they're doing, okay. But the real threat is the prophets that speak out against these devils, and we use your own people as a aid into exposing what you're doing through the scriptures. All right, because jumping down to verse 8, it says, so they shall make their own tongue to fall upon themselves, all that see them shall flee away. Because like Elder Yashwama likes to bring out, scriptures talk about in the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses. Well, the 2 witnesses being the northern and the southern kingdom, all right, but that third witness is your own people, as well as your technology, this AI, man. Because this AI, if you word it correctly, will also expose things as well. More so in the beginning stages before Esau tweaked it. But you have the chat, Gronk, all right. You had TikTok, Instagram, Threads, all these social media sites. They're also an aid in being that that witness as well, because they bring evidence that the prophets can use to help expose this devil, man. All right. So nobody is looking at the so-called white man, all right, the small hat, as an angel of light anymore, because we see that you devils, all right, are nothing more than devil worshiping weirdos, man. All right, devil worshiping pedos, PDF files, man. you know. So this is why at the end of the day, man, our message, all right, to our people is to is to come out of her, like we're commanded to, all right, in multiple scriptures, all right. The scriptures say, flee out of her, flee out of the midst of Babylon, and touch no unclean thing, man. All right, come out of her, depart, for this is not our rest, for it's polluted. It will so destroy you with a sore pollution, scriptures like that, because we understand that Esau is going to continue to lull you to sleep until he destroys you. All right, like that's why the scriptures refer to our people as a sheep being led to their slaughter, because you've been demoralized and desensitized to the point to where Esau is literally conditioning you for your own destruction, and you don't even see it. And some of them do, but they're willingly ready to accept it. All right. So this is why at the end of the day, man, the ones that they really fear are the prophets, which is why that video came out about a year or two ago about that councilwoman over there in the land of Israel speaking about the biggest threat to the tiny tops is the African American youth. All right, and that's not just speaking about any YN. All right, this is speaking about the prophets. Okay, the men of the Lord, all right, that the Lord is using to wake up the rest of the elect. Okay, so they're hearing that message going out. All right, as we're bringing out, all right, these devils. Okay, you cannot hide anymore, man. All right, as it says here in Psalm 94:16, it says, "Who will rise up for me against the evildoers, or who will stand up for me against the workers of iniquity?" And that's what we're doing. That's what the prophets of the Lord are doing. That's why these devils are in fear, because we're able to link what you're doing to the characteristics of who the wicked are according to the scriptures. All right, because you devils are doing the same thing, all right, that the wicked was doing back in the ancient world. All right, you took on the same demonic customs of the ancient Canaanites, man. Because right here, this is where they get the idea, for what they're doing over in Epstein Island and others. Because Epstein Island isn't the only private island where they're doing this, man. We understand that America, all right, has a whole underground, trafficking, pretty much ring to where these missing children that go, missing by the thousands every year. Okay, then they weren't all just going to Epstein Island. It's multiple Epstein Islands. It's multiple, different, trafficking rings, not just in America, but all over the world. All right, they show you that in different movies, like what's the one with William Neeson, Taken, Hostel, movies like that, man. They show you that what they're doing, what they're all about, man. In that, so they got these things from the Canaanites, man. All right, this is proof. This is Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 12 and verse 3. It says, "For it was thy will to destroy by the hands of our fathers both those old inhabitants of thy holy land, whom thou hatest for doing most odious works of witchcraft and wicked sacrifices, and also those merciless murderers of children, and devourers of men's flesh, and the feast of blood, with their priests out of the midst of thy idolatrous crew, and the parents that killed with their own hands souls destitute of help." Right, and that's the same thing that's being read in these Epstein files, man. All right, these devils are doing the same thing that they were doing back then. All right, because like I said, when you go into their history, going back to the Greeks and the Romans, when the first thing they did when they got into power was go right over to Egypt, all right, and get that information, all right, that they were doing, okay, because the Egyptians, they got that from the sons of Canaan, because they're Hamites as well, but Esau, had to go get that knowledge because that was originally his, going all the way back to the sons of the wicked, so all this is just showing you that these devils are these they're the devil, like I said, man. They're the ones of who the Lord hates, as we read about. All right, this is why his destruction is going to be so great, because this great wickedness being done, man. All right, you eating children, you raping children, you doing all type of wicked shit. Like, it came out while a good majority of these celebrities, are able to maintain their youth like that, is because they're drinking blood, man. Like that video that came out with about Diddy. One of the dudes that used to let him get his blood. All right, he spoke out against that, man. And the proof that he wasn't lying is, look how quickly Diddy aged when he was locked up, man. All right, and we see that with different other celebrities as well. All right, but this just shows you the power that these devils, they access through that left hand knowledge, man. All right, so this is why at the end of the day the Lord told us, all right, to call these devils out, man. All right, we're the only ones speaking out truly against what this man is doing. All right, and actually making progress in the spirit as we're witnessing these things, become accounted for, man. Okay, because as the secrets are being exposed, he's coming out of power more and more, which is why they have to be more blatant with the rituals, more blatant with the shit. They're leaking the Epstein files on purpose, okay, because that's nothing more than a distraction, all right, to get the people's minds off of what they're doing behind the scenes, such as what's going on with ICE, all right, what's going on as far as with World War III, the MOTB and these different things. So it's nothing more than a distraction at the end of the day, all right. But they're in fear because they know the prophets, all right, are continually prophesying against them, and that vibration, all right, is that righteous vibration, all right, is helping destroy their kingdom. Okay, this is Ezekiel chapter 35:1. It says, moreover, the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, Son of man, set thy face against Mount Seir, and prophesy against it, and say unto it, Thus saith the Lord, Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushua, Behold, O Mount Seir, I am against thee, and I will stretch out my hand against thee, and I will make thee most desolate. And they know that future is nigh. Okay, they know that their captivity is nigh, man. Their captivity and their eventual erasure off the planet. All right. It says, I will lay thy cities waste, and thou shalt be desolate. Thou shalt know that I am the Lord. All right. And they know that Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushua is coming back to judge them, man. All right. That's why they're trying to hurry up and establish this new world order. This is why, like I said, those rituals and everything is becoming more outright. Okay, because they're desperate, and like I said, man, they're worried about us. They're not worried about the average, everyday, citizen protesting, because that's not doing shit. All right, you walking around with a painted sign talking about lock up, Bill Gates and whoever else that's on that list. That's not gonna change shit, man. All right, the only thing that's gonna truly change is when Yahushua cracks them clouds, and the men of the Lord is given the power to put you devils in those chains, man. All right. So this is 2 Corinthians chapter 10 verse 3. It says, we are human, but we don't wage war. This is an NLT. It says, we are human, but we do not wage war as humans do. We use God's mighty weapons, not worldly weapons, to knock down the strongholds of human reasoning and to destroy false arguments. All right, and that's exactly what the Spirit of the Lord, is allowing us to do through the breaking down of these scriptures, man. All right, hey, we're fighting against this man. All right, because we understand that we're in a highly spiritual war about to turn physical. Okay, so as much as those wicked enchantments are going up through the Spirit, okay, the Lord has given us the truth back to where we're able to wage war spiritually against that. All right, so as we put up the curses against Babylon and our enemies, all right, hey, these devils, they see the effects of what the children of Israel are bringing back into the earth, man. All right, it says, we destroy every proud obstacle that keeps people from knowing the Most High. We capture their rebellious thoughts and teach them to obey Yahweh Shem Yahushua. All right, and that's, like I said, that's the biggest threat that these devils see, us doing. Okay, because when Israel repents, okay, that's where our power lies in, man. Okay, coming back unto the Lord, fearing him and obeying him. All right. And that in turn frees us from this devil's grip. All right. And now he can't do nothing with us, man. All right. Hey, because you can, kill our body, but our spirit, you can't touch. Okay. And we understand the concept of reincarnation, so we don't fear death, man. All right. So a man that doesn't fear death, that scares Esau, man. All right. That's why when you read about in Second Maccabees, the 7th chapter, all right, when Antiochus was torturing and murdering, all right, the mother and her 7 sons, man. By the time it got to that last son, okay, and he was trying his hardest to try to persuade that man or that boy to pretty much be on his side, but the Spirit of the Lord, all right, through the boy condemned Antiochus, man. Because we understand that, hey, even if this body dies, that we're gonna be brought back, and eventually, okay, we're gonna have you devils in slavery. So, like I said, we don't fear death. We don't fear anything that you can do unto us, because we know that the Most High, at the end of the day, has our spirit in His hand. All right, and if we are of the elect, we will, be brought back in that angelic body, and we're gonna put our foot up your ass, man. All right. So you devils have a lot, all right, to pay for, man. Okay. This is Proverbs chapter 16 and verse 4. It says, "The Lord have made all things for Himself, yea, even the wicked for the day of evil. For everyone that is proud in heart is an abomination unto the Lord,